All right, let's talk about Arya IV. Arya IV is really just an excellent chapter, and it's unexpected because you're in the middle of the action of Ned and the coup, the failed coup, and then all of a sudden we get this really excellent chapter with the characterization of Syrio and his story, and it's I think it really highlights how well George R. R. Martin does dialogue. The fact that you can have a character telling a story, and the story is engaging, and Syrio is engaging, and it's so positive that no one wants Syrio to be dead, but we fall in love with Syrio in this chapter, and then he's killed. And in many ways, this Arya chapter, I kind of think it transfers one of the storylines that George wanted for Jon onto Arya. If you remember at the beginning of the Jon story, he was talking about how, oh, bastards have to notice things more than others. And that's kind of just dropped as a plot for Jon. Jon then becomes, they really focus more on Jon's sympathy. Sympathy becomes Jon's and empathy becomes Jon's major character trait. His connection to Sam Tarly, and then his connection to the wildlings, and where that leads him. Jon noticing things, which was how Jon is introduced. Instead, that characterization gets transferred to Arya, and this chapter is all about that, noticing things that no one else notices. And throughout Arya's story, that sticks. She notices that Jock and Rorgan Biter are different in A Clash of Kings. She notices that that there's something off about the Brotherhood without banners, and then when she gets to the House of the Undying, she notices she can see through the glamours and things like that. So in many ways, this is just the Jon characterization being transferred to Arya, but it's done really well. We get a story from Arya from Jaqen about noticing things that are obvious, and yet everyone pretends they're not there, and then and that launches Arya's story. Anyway, well, let's get into it. It's a medium for Game of Thrones. It's a medium length chapter, 4,000 some words. Obviously long compared to what we just had with Eddard, but short, very short by, A Dance with Dragons standards. Arya. Hi, Syrio Forel called out, slashing at her head. The stick swords clacked as Arya parried. Left, he shouted, and his blade came whistling. Hers darted to meet it. The clack made him click his teeth together. Right, he said. Now low, and left again. Faster and faster, moving forward. Arya retreated before him, checking each blow. George likes giving each character like idiosyncrasies that just give more character to each of them. I mean, if you notice, it's almost hilarious how many characters have little idiosyncrasies. Tywin sucking at his teeth, Vargo Hoat having a lisp, little things like that. But it's each little thing gives these people character. I mean, Arya biting her lip, Jon flexing his hand, but Syrio, his clacking teeth. Lunge, he warned, and when he thrust, she sidestepped, swept his blade away, and slashed at his shoulder. She almost touched him. Almost. So close it made her grin. A strand of hair dangled in her eyes, limp with sweat. She pushed it away with the back of her hand. Left, Syrio sang out. Low! His sword was a blur, and the small hall echoed in the clack, clack, clack. Left, high, left, right, left, low, left. The wooden blade caught her high in the breast, and a sudden stinging blow that hurt all the more because it came from the wrong side. Ow, she cried out. She would have a fresh bruise there by the time she went to sleep somewhere out at sea. A bruise is a lesson. Again, this is, a thought plan never comes to fruition. She thinks she's going out on a ship. She's not. A bruise is a lesson, she told herself, and each lesson makes us better. Syrio stepped back. You are dead now, Arya made a face. You cheated, she said hotly. You said left, and you went right. Just so. And now you are a dead girl. But you lied. My words lied. My eyes and my arms shouted out the truth, but you were not seeing. I was so. I watched you every second. Watching is not seeing, dead girl. The water dancer sees. Come, put down the sword. It is time for listening now. There's a bit of Yogi Berra in this. You can notice so much just by watching kind of idea. She followed him over to the wall where they settled on a bench. Syrio was the first sword of the Sea Lord of Braavos. And are you knowing how that came to pass? You were the finest swordsman in the city. Just so, but why? Other men were stronger, faster, younger. Why was Syrio Farrell the best? I will tell you now. He touched the tip of his little finger slightly to his eyelid. The seeing, the true seeing, that is the heart of it. Hear me, the ships of Braavos sail as far as the winds blow, the land's strange and wonderful, and when they return, their captains fetch queer animals to the Sea Lord's menagerie. Such animals as you have never seen, striped horses, great spotted things with necks as long as stilts. Obviously, we're talking about zebras and giraffes. Hairy mouse pigs as big as cows. I guess that could be any wildebeest or something, or a stinging manticores, tigers that carry their cubs in a pouch, obviously a kangaroo. Terrible walking lizards with scythes for claws. I mean, I guess this is supposed to be like a velociraptor. Syrio Farrell has seen such things. On the day I am speaking of, the first sword was newly dead, and the Sea Lord sent for me. Many Braavos had come to him, and as many had been sent away. None could say why. When I came into his presence, he was seated, and in his lap was a fat yellow cat. He told me that one of his captains had brought the beast to him from an island beyond the sunrise. Have you ever seen her like? He asked me. And to him I said, each night in the alleys of Braavos I see 1,000 like him. And the Sea Lord laughed. And that day I was named the first sword. Arya screwed up her face. I don't understand. Syrio clicked his teeth together. The cat was an ordinary cat, no more. The others expected a fabulous beast. So that's what they saw. How large it was, they said. It was no larger than any other cat. Only fat from indolence. For the Sea Lord fed it from his own table. What curious small ears, they said. Its ears have been chewed away in kitten fights, and it was plainly a tomcat. Yet the Sea Lord said her, and that is what the others saw. Are you hearing? So the big thing, I mean, not only they all think it's a male cat because the Sea Lord keeps saying her. Even it's clearly a boy cat, but he's just looking and seeing. And this is, I mean, more or less the story of the Emperor's clothes and stuff like that. The world is filled with these leaders that shouldn't be leading and shouldn't have power. And the minute somebody says, the Emperor has no clothes, you shouldn't be doing this. You are nothing. It all gets into power resides where people think it resides. But this is a great chapter in that there's the thematic message of a Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire is in it, in this tiny little story. But it also applies directly to what's going to happen to them later. George clearly liked this chapter because he decided to write the episode of Game of Thrones based on this episode too. So he clearly recognized when he hits a home run. Arya thought about it. You saw what was there. Just so. Opening your eyes is all that is needing. The heart lies and the head plays tricks with us, but the eyes see true. Look with your eyes, hear with your ears, taste with your mouth, smell with your nose, feel with your skin. Then comes the thinking afterwards, and in that way, knowing the truth. Just so, said Arya, grinning. Syrio Farrell allowed himself a smile. I'm thinking that when we are reaching this Winterfell of yours, it'll be time to put this needle in your hand. Yes, Arya said eagerly. Wait till I show Jon. I guess she should have known that Jon should be at the wall, but maybe she's thinking Jon would be visiting. Behind her, the great wooden doors of the small hall flew open with a resounding crash. Arya whirled. A knight of the King's Guard stood beneath the arch of the door with 5 Lannister guardsmen arrayed behind him. He was in full armor, but his visor was up. Arya remembered his droopy eyes and rust-colored whiskers from when he had come to Winterfell with the king, Sir Meryn Trant. The red cloaks wore mail shirts over boiled leather and steel caps with lion crests. Arya, the knight said, come with us, child. Arya chewed her lip uncertainly. What do you want? Your father wants to see you. Arya took a step forward, but Syrio Forel held her by the arm. And why is it that the Lord Editor is sending Lannister men in the place of his own? I am wondering. So right there, this is why Syrio Forel is the first Sword of Bravos. I mean, yes, I've done theories that perhaps the cat is glamored and things like that. And I think it all sort of relates. And maybe why glamours work, if you're saying it's some sort of telepathic cueing of something and people see what they want to see rather than just what's there in front of you, see with your eyes. And people that are willing to see with their eyes and say what is there. The Emperor has no clothes. But here Syrio is using the advice. He's looking and he's saying, oh, something's wrong. So in the same way that he spotted the cat being a regular cat, he sees what's going on here. That why would Ned send Lannister men to Arya? And this is why he's first sword. Mind your place, dancing master, said Sir Meryn said. This is of no concern of yours. My father wouldn't send you, Arya said. She snapped up her stick sword. The Lannister laughed. Put down the sticks, girl, Sir Meryn told her. I am a sworn brother of the Kingsguard, the White Swords. So was the Kingslayer when he killed the old king, Arya said. I don't have to go with you if I don't want. Sir Meryn Trant ran out of patience. Take her, he said to his men. He lowered the visor of his helm. 3 of them started forward, chainmail, clinking softly with each step. Arya was suddenly afraid. Fear cuts deeper than swords, she told herself, to slow the racing of her heart. Syrio Forel stepped between them, tapping his wooden sword lightly against his boot. You will be stopping there. Are you men or dogs that would threaten a child? Out of the way, old man, one of the red cloaks said. Syrio's stick came whistling up and rang against his helm. I am Syrio Forel, and you will now be speaking to me with more respect. Bald bastard. The man yanked free his longsword, the stick moving again, blindingly fast. Arya heard a loud crack as the sword went clattering to the stone floor. My hand! The guardsman yelped, cradling his broken fingers. You are quick for a dancing master, said Sir Meryn. You are slow for a knight, Syrio replied. Kill the Braavosi and bring me the girl. The knight in the white armor commanded. This is, it reminds me of, Leave the gun, take the cannolis or something in The Godfather. Kill the Braavosi, bring me the girl. The 4 Lannister guardsmen unsheathed their swords. The 5th, with broken fingers, spat and pulled free a dagger with his left hand. Syrio Forel clicked his teeth together. There's his idiosyncrasy. Sliding into his water dancer's stance, presenting only his side to the foe. Arya, child, he called out, never looking, never taking his eyes off the Lannisters. We are done with dancing for today. But you are going now. Run to your father. Arya did not want to leave, but he had taught her to do as she said. Swift as a deer, she whispered. Just so, said Syrio Forel as the Lannisters closed. Arya retreated, her own sword stick clutching tightly in her hand. Watching him now, she realized that Syrio had only been toying with her when they had dueled. The red cloaks came at him from 3 sides with steel in their hands. They had chainmail over their chest and arms and steel codpieces sewn to their pants, but only leather on their legs. Their hands were bare, and their caps they wore had nose guards, but no visors over the eyes. So Syrio is going to notice all of the weak spots. Syrio did not wait for them to reach him, but spun to his left. Arya had never seen a man move as fast. He checked one sword with his stick and whirled away from a second. Off balance, the second man lurched to his feet. Syrio put a boot to his back, and the red cloak went down together. The 3rd guard came leaping over them, slashing at the water dancer's head. Syrio ducked under his blade and thrust upward. The guardsman fell screaming as blood welled from the wet red hole where his left eye had been. Right in the visor. The fallen men were getting up. Syrio kicked one in the face and snatched the steel cap off the other's head. The dagger man stabbed at him. Syrio caught the thrust in the helmet and staggered the man's kneecap with the stick. The last red cloak shouted and cursed and charged, hacking down with both hands on his sword. Syrio rolled right, and the butcher's cut caught the helmetless man between the neck and shoulder as he struggled to his knees. The long sword crunched through mail and leather and flesh. The man on his knees shrieked. He's using the men to kill each other. Before his killer could wrench free his blade, Syrio caught the thrust, shattered him in his kneecap. The last rifle, Syrio rolled, caught his men, struggled, longsword crunched. He's shrieked before the killer could wrench free his blade. Syrio jabbed him in the apple of his throat. The guardsman, Okay. The guardsman gave a choked cry and staggered back, clutching his neck, his face blackening. This is where he knocked in his Adam's apple to cause him to choke. 5 men were down, dead, or dying by the time Arya reached the back door that opened on the kitchen. She heard Sir Meryn Trent curse. Bloody oafs, he swore, drawing his long sword from its scabbard. Syrio Forel resumed his stance and clicked his teeth together. Arya, child, he called out, never looking at her. Be gone now. She probably should have ran. She probably should have ran earlier. This is what he's, Look with your eyes, he had said. She saw the knight in the pale armor, head to foot, legs, throat, and hands sheathed in metal, eyes hidden behind the high white helm, and in his hands cruel steel. Against that, Syrio in a leather vest with a wooden sword in his hand. Syrio, run, she screamed. The first sword of Braavos does not run. This is, I suppose, similar to a callback to the King's Guard, saying that the King's Guard do not flee. And here he has a similar vow. And so I guess we're supposed to be thinking about the Tower of Joy here. He sang as Sir Meryn slashed at him. Syrio danced away from his cut, his stick a blur. In a heartbeat he had bounced blows off the knight's temple, elbow, and throat, the wood ringing against the metal of helm, gauntlet, and gorget. Arya stood frozen. Sir Meryn advanced. Syrio backed away. He checked the next blow, spun away from the second, deflected the third. The force sliced his stick in two, splintering the wood and shearing through the leather core. Sobbing, Arya spun and ran. She plunged to the kitchens and buttery, blind with panic, weaving between cooks and potboys. A baker's helper stepped in front of her, holding a wooden tray. Arya bowled her over, scattering fragrant loaves of fresh baked bread on the floor. She heard shouting behind her as she spun around a portly butcher who stood gaping at her with a cleaver in his hands. His arms were red to the elbow. All that Syrio had taught her went racing through her head, swift as a deer, quiet as a shadow, fear cuts deeper than swords, quick as a snake, calm as still water, fear cuts deeper than swords, strong as a boar, fierce as a wolverine, fear cuts deeper than swords. The man who fears losing has already lost, fear cuts deeper than swords, fear cuts deeper than swords, fear cuts deeper than swords. The grip of her wooden sword was slick with sweat, and Arya was breathing hard when she reached the turret stair. And for an instant she froze, up or down. Up would take her to the covered bridge that spanned the small court to the Tower of the Hand. But that would be the way they'd expect her to go, for certain. Never do what they expect. And so here we have her. We had a bit of this in Arya 3, but here we have advice coming to her. The mentor's advice that the hero always, has to remember. Never do what they expect, Syrio once said. Arya went down, around and around, leaping over the narrow stone steps 2 and 3 at a time. She emerged in a cavernous vaulted cellar, surrounded by casks of ale, stacked 20 feet tall. The only light came through narrow, slanting windows high in the wall. The cellar was a dead end. There was no way out, but the way she had come. She dare not go back up those steps, but she couldn't stay here either. She had to find her father and tell him what had happened. Her father would protect her. Arya thrust her wooden sword through her belt and began to climb, leaping from cask to cask until she could reach a window. Grasping the stone with both hands, she pulled herself up. The wall was 3 feet thick, the window a tunnel slanting up and out. Arya wriggled toward the daylight. When her head reached the ground level, she peered across the bailey to the Tower of the Hand. The stout wooden door hung splintered and broken, as if by axes. A dead man sprawled face down on the steps, a cloak tangled beneath him, the back of his mailed shirt soaked red. The corpse's cloak was gray wool trimmed with white satin. She was in sudden terror. She could not tell who it was. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Do we know who this guard is? Obviously not Fat Tom. No, she whispered. What was happening? Where was her father? Why had the red cloaks come for her? She remembered what the man in the yellow beard had said the days she had found the monsters. This is Illyrio she's talking about. If one hand can die, why not a second? Arya felt tears in her eyes. She had her breath to listen. She held her breath to listen. She heard the sounds of fighting, shouts, screams, the clang of steel and steel coming through the windows of the Tower of the Hand. She could not go back. Her father. Arya closed her eyes. For a moment, she was too frightened to move. They'd killed Jory and Weil and Heward and the guardsman on the step, whoever he was. They could kill her father, too. And if they caught her, fear cuts deeper than swords, she said aloud. But it was no good pretending to be a water dancer. Syrio had been a water dancer, and the White Knight probably killed him. And anyhow, she was only a little girl with a wooden stick, alone and afraid. She squirmed into the yard, glancing around warily as she climbed to her feet. The castle seemed deserted. The Red Keep was never deserted. All the people must be hiding inside, their doors barred. Arya glanced up longingly at her bedchambers, then moved away from the Tower of the Hand, keeping close to the wall as she slid from shadow to shadow. She pretended she was chasing cats, except she was the cat now, if they caught her, they would kill her. Moving between buildings and over walls, keeping stone at her back wherever possible so no one could surprise her, Arya reached the stables almost without incident. A dozen gold cloaks in mail and plate ran past as she was edging across the inner bailey, but without knowing whose side they were on, she hunched down low in the shadows and let them pass. Hullen, who was master of horse at Winterfell as long as Arya could remember, was slumped on the ground by the stable door. Ah. He had been stabbed so many times it looked as if his tunic was patterned in scarlet flowers. Arya was certain he was dead, but when she kept closer, her eyes opened. Arya Underfoot, he whispered. You must warn your lord father. Frothy red spittle bubbled from his mouth. The master of horse closed his eyes again and said no more. Inside were more bodies, a groom she had played with, and 3 of her father's household guard. A wagon laden with crates and chests stood abandoned near the door of the stable. The dead man must have been loading it for the trip to the docks when they were attacked. Arya snuck closer. One of the corpses was Desmond, who had shown her his longsword and promised to protect her father. He lay on his back, staring blindly at the ceiling as flies crawled across his eyes. Close to him was a dead man in the red cloak and lion-crested helm of Lannisters. Only one, though. Every northerner is worth 10 of these southern swords, Desmond had told her. You liar, she said, kicking his body in sudden fury. The animals were restless in the stalls, whickering and snorting at the scent of blood. Arya's only plan was to saddle a horse and flee away from the castle and the city. All she had to do was stay on the King's Road, and it would take her back to Winterfell. She took a bridle and harness off the wall. As she crossed back of the wagon, a fallen chest caught her eyes. It must have been knocked down in the fight or dropped as it was being loaded. The wood had split and the lid opened to spill the chest's contents to the ground. Arya recognized silks and satins and velvets she never wore. She might need warm clothes on the King's Road, though, and besides... Arya knelt in the dirt among the scattered clothes. She found a heavy woolen cloak, a velvet skirt, and a silk tunic, and some small clothes. A dress her mother's had embroidered for her, a silver baby bracelet she might sell. Shoving the broken lid out of the way, she groped inside the chest for a needle. She had hidden it away at the bottom, under everything, but her stuff had all been jumbled around when the chest was dropped. For a moment, Arya was afraid someone had found the sword and stolen it. Then her fingers felt the hardness of the metal under the satin gown. This is really, I could tell that George just spent a lot of time on this chapter because it's simple language but still very beautiful. It's just like feeling the hardness of metal under a satin gown. We've all done this, like searching through luggage trying to find an object. There she is, a voice hissed. Oh, there she is, a voice hissed close behind her. Startled, Arya whirled. A stable boy stood behind her, a smirk on his face, his filthy white undertunic peeking out from beneath a soiled jerkin. His boots were covered with manure, and he had a pitchfork in one hand. Who are you? She asked. She don't know me, he said, but I know her. Oh, yes, the wolf girl. Help me saddle a horse, she pleaded, reaching back into the chest, groping for Needle. My father's the hand of the king. He'll reward you. Father's dead, the boy said. He shuffled towards her. It's the queen who'll be rewarding me. Come here, girl. Stay away. Her fingers closed around Needle's hilt. I says come. He grabbed her arm hard. Everything Sirio Farrell had ever taught her vanished in a heartbeat. It was that instant of sudden terror that the only lesson Arya could remember was the one Jon Snow had given her in the very first. She stuck him with the pointy end, driving the blade upward with a wild, hysterical strength. And this is the culmination of the culmination of the foreshadowing of the chapter where Jon gives her the blade, coming here in an unexpected fashion. Her killing this boy. Needle went through his leather jerkin, and the flesh of his belly came out between his shoulder blades. The white flesh of his belly came out between his shoulder blades. The boy dropped the pitchfork and made a soft noise, something between a gasp and a sigh. His hands closed around the blade. Oh gods, he moaned, as his undertunic began to redden. Take it out. When she took it out, he died. The horses were screaming. Arya stood over the body, still and frightened, in the face of death. So here she's become, in a sense, she's become an adult, and as she's killed someone and, this puncturing this boy, breaking a maidenhead or whatever, conflation of sex and violence that George R. R. Martin likes. Blood had gushed from the boy's mouth as he collapsed, and more was seeping from the slit of his belly, pooling beneath his body. His palms were cut where he grabbed the blade. She backed away slowly. Needle ran red in her hands. She had to get somewhere. She had to get away, someplace far from here, someplace safe away from the stable boy's accusing eyes. She snatched up the bridle and harness and again ran to her mare, but as she lifted the saddle to the horse's back, she realized with a sudden sick dread that the castle gates would be closed. Even the postern doors would likely be guarded. Maybe the guards wouldn't recognize her, but they thought she was a boy. Perhaps they'd let her know. They have orders not to let anyone out. It wouldn't matter whether they knew her or not. Yeah, it's weird because George R. R. Martin kind of knows about bridles and such, but it's funny that they always talk about it. He always talks about it as saddling a horse, as if the saddle is the most important part. The saddling is probably easier than the bridling. The bridling is the thing that takes time. You got to get that thing in the horse's teeth. Well, putting the saddle on is much easier, but at the time of writing this, I don't think George was that much of a horseback rider. But there was another way out of the castle. The saddle slipped from Arya's fingers and fell to the dirt with a thump and a puff of dust. She couldn't find the room with the monsters again. She wasn't certain, yet she knew she had to try. She found the clothing she'd gathered and slipped it into the cloak, concealing Needle beneath its folds. The rest of her things she tied in a roll. With the bundle under her arm, she crept to the far end of the stable. Unlatching the back door, she peeked out anxiously. She could hear the distant sound of swords play and the shivery wail of a man screaming in pain across the bailey. She would need to go down the serpentine steps, past the small kitchen and the pig yard. That was how she had gone last time, chasing the black tomcat. Only that would take her right past the barracks of the gold cloaks. She couldn't go that way. Arya tried to think of another way. If she crossed to the other side of the castle, she could creep along the river wall and through the little godswood, but she'd first have to cross the yard in plain view of the other guards on the walls. Now, I know that people have tried to map out Maegor's Keep and stuff like that. It's really difficult. I've looked at maps that are created. Some are okay, but nothing's ever going to be perfect. And I think later, when she gets out of the city, there's some mistakes on on geography that are pretty clear. But anyway, it's not really important. She had never seen so many men on the wall, gold cloaks, most of them armed with spears. Some of them knew her by sight. What would they do if they saw her running across the yard? She looked so small from up there. Would they be able to tell who she was? Would they care? She had to leave now, she told herself. But when the moment came, she was too frightened to move. Calm as still water, a small voice whispered in her ear. Arya was so startled she almost dropped her bundle. She looked around wildly, but there was no one in the stable but her and the horses and the dead men. So yes, here we get these voices talking to her. And here it seems a little more than just Syrio, like as if this is some supernatural event. Perhaps the three-eyed crow, time-traveling brand, something. I mean, at the time, but it's definitely more than just her remembering the lessons, because the she had those before, but this is very different. She actually hears calm as still water. A small voice whispered in her ear. Arya was so startled she almost dropped her bundle. And there's definitely supernatural elements to the Arya story later, where she goes in the werewood at Harrenhal and such. So it seems someone like the whatever Bloodraven, the three-eyed crow, time-traveling brand, someone is speaking to Arya here. Quiet as a shadow, she heard. Was it her own voice or Sirio's? She could not tell, yet somehow it calmed her fears. She stepped out of the stable. It was the scariest thing she'd ever done. She wanted to run and hide, but she'd made herself walk across the yard slowly, putting one foot in front of the other, as if she had all the time in the world and no reason to be afraid of anyone. She thought she could feel their eyes, like bugs crawling on her skin under her clothes. Arya never looked up. If she saw them watching, all her courage would desert her. She knew, and she would drop the bundle of clothes and run and cry like a baby, and then they would have her. She kept her gaze on the ground. By the time she reached the shadow of the royal sept on the far side of the yard, Arya was cold with sweat, but no one had raised the hue and cry. Hue and cry is like and there's legal aspects to it too in medieval times, but essentially the hue and cry is to get a whole group of people to be like, hey, wait, what's going on there? Hey, crime, So like George uses it like that like getting, alerting the masses of something and having them all like scream about something happening, is the hue and cry. The sept was open and empty. Inside, 100 prayer candles burnt in a fragrant silence. Arya figured the gods would never miss two. She stuffed them up her sleeves and left by a back window. Sneaking back to the alley where she had cornered the one-eared Tom was easy, but after that she'd got lost. She crawled in and out of windows, hopped over walls, and felt her way through dark cellars, quiet as a shadow. Once she heard a woman weeping. It took her more than an hour to find the low, narrow window that slanted down to the dungeon where the monsters waited. Do we ever know who the weeping woman is? She tossed her bundle through and doubled back to light her candle. That was chancy. The fire she'd remember seeing had burnt down to the embers, and she heard voices as she was blowing on the coals. Cusping her fingers around the flickering candle, she went out the window as they were coming in the door, without ever getting a glimpse of who it was. This time the monsters did not frighten her. They seemed almost old friends. Arya held the candle over her head. With each step she took, the shadows moved against the walls as if they were turning to watch her pass. Dragons, she whispered. She slid needle out from under her cloak. The slender blade seemed very small and the dragons very big, yet somehow Arya felt better with steel in her hand. The long windowless hall The long windowless hall beyond the door was black as she remembered. She held needle in her left hand, her sword hand, the candle in her right fist. Hot wax ran down across her knuckles. The entrance to the well had been to the left. So Arya went right. Part of her wanted to run, but she was afraid of snuffing out her candle. She heard the faint squeaking of rats and glimpsed a pair of tiny glowing eyes at the edge of the light, but rats did not scare her. Other things did. It would be so easy to hide here, as she had hidden from the wizard and the man with the forked beard. She could almost see the stable boy standing against the wall, his hands curled into claws, with the blood still dripping from the deep gashes in his palms where Needle had cut him. He might be waiting to grab her as she passed. He would see her candle coming a long way off. Maybe she would be better off without the light. Fear cuts deeper than swords, the quiet voice inside her whispered. Suddenly, Arya remembered the crypts of Winterfell. They were a lot scarier than this place. She told herself. She'd just been a little girl the first time she saw them. Her brother Robb had taken them down. Her and Sansa and baby Bran, who had been no bigger than Rickon was now. They'd only had one candle between them, and Bran's eyes had gotten as big as saucers as he stared at the stone faces of the kings of winter with their wolves at their feet and their iron swords across their laps. So I think this is back into this idea of like not being afraid of the dark, darkness awakening abilities, things like this, the crypts. There's a lot packed in there. We obviously with the Bran story, we have him waking up in the darkness of the crypts, and later Arya wakes up in the darkness of her blindness. And everybody, there's all these stories of going to the crypts and the fear there, and feeling scared, but it having something special there. So I think that it's kind of getting into all of this. Robb took them all the way down to the end, past Grandfather and Brandon and Lyanna, to show them their own tombs. Sansa kept looking at the stubby little candle, anxious that it might go out. Old Nan had told her there were spiders down here. Sansa kept looking at the stubby little candle, anxious it might go out. Old Nan had told her there were spiders down here and rats as big as dogs. So Old Nan is always trying to scare them for some reason. Robb smiled when she said that. There are worse things than spiders and rats, he whispered. This is where the dead walk. This is obviously metaphorical at the time, but it's funny that later in the show, like at the end of the show, the dead literally do walk, and the things are they're supposed to be scared down there. But they're also talking about the dream and things like that. What the crypt dream that Bran and Jon keep getting. That was when they heard the sound, low and deep and shivery. Baby Bran had clutched at Arya's hand. When the spirit stepped out of the tomb, pale, white, and moaning for blood, Sansa ran, shrieking for the stairs, and Bran wrapped himself around Robb's legs, sobbing. Arya stood her ground and gave the spirit a punch. It was only Jon, covered with flour. You stupid, she told him. You scared the baby. But Jon and Robb just laughed and laughed. And pretty soon, Bran and Arya were laughing too. I mean, it's funny that Jon has all these dreams about being cold and dead in the crypts, but he actually was pretending to be a dead body in a crypt once. This doesn't come up that much. I mean, it's such a weird story. It's such a striking story. And the crypt dreams keep coming back. But nobody else thinks about this Jon covered in flour thing before. Again, Jon and Robb just laughed and laughed. Pretty soon, Bran and Arya were laughing too. The memory made Arya smile, and after that, the darkness held no more terrors for her. The stable boy was dead. She'd killed him, and if he jumped out after her, she'd kill him again. She was going home. Everything would be better once she was home again, safe beyond Winterfell's gray granite walls. Her footsteps sent soft echoes hurrying ahead of her as Arya plunged deeper into the darkness. So yeah, I mean, this is just this is a real. This is a real master chapter, exciting, uh, filled with a lot of filled with a lot of recurring themes, a lot of supernatural mystery, great characters, great characterization for Arya. Arya for the first time is really, I don't know, for the first time, but she's really like feeling like a character that's changing dynamically, growing up. And yeah, I mean, like I say, George, I think, realized that this chapter was really great too, and this is why he wanted to adapt it for a Game of Thrones. Because I'm trying to remember um, which, I know it was this one. Hold on a second. Yeah, this was the only, the pointy end is the only one, is the only script for season one that George R. R. Martin wrote. And keep in mind, at the time, he was trying to finish A Dance with Dragons. I'm not, no, when he wrote that script. So he was really busy, but he really wanted to write this script, and so he did. Yeah, so there it is. Great chapter. I think George realized it was a great chapter, filled with a lot of excitement and callbacks to the previous chapters. Things culminating here. Anyway, I guess we'll go on to, I think it's Sansa. Sansa next is the next chapter. Let's check on that. I'm pretty sure that we like follow the coup. Just we stay in the coup area. Yeah, it's Sansa. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.